Friends, I'm back. I told you I was going to keep showing up every day this week to talk to you about mental health, and I'm here again. And today I want to talk about a strategy that I don't hear people talk about a lot that has really made a huge difference in my life, both when things were super duper hard and when things just feel a little icky. And so I'm just going to get right to it. So we talk a lot about time. We talk about time is kind of unpredictable, just in general in the world, right? We talk about time being unpredictable. We talk about how it goes by too fast, or it takes too long, or we talk about how time will tell, give it time, all of these things. But I think often we don't actually use the truth about the way that time is to our advantage. And so I'm going to try to just be succinct about this. But the thing that I have noticed to be very true is that time changes things. It just always does. It's like I was talking to somebody the other day and I was telling them it's like the best thing and the worst thing about time is that it always happens. It always makes things pass. It always changes us. It makes us older. You know, it makes our kids grow up. Sometimes time happens and we miss things. Sometimes time happens and we grow. And that's the thing about time is it's like this force that's kind of outside of our control, not just kind of, that's completely outside of our control. But what I found about time, especially during the time that I was super struggling with my mental health, is that time can kind of be an interesting, sneaky little ally if we let it. And so I like to tell people this one strategy that I use and have used and continue to use involving time when I start to feel super anything. You put whatever there, like anxious or depressed or suicidal. Honestly, I feel like this time strategy can be really useful in all of those moments. Now, before I go any further and give you a strategy, I'm telling you this strategy with the important bookend on each side that says, if you are severely depressed, if you are thinking about ending your life, if you are feeling like you can't handle it anymore, if you are so anxious that you are rolled up in a ball, or you can't do the thing that you need to do and you feel frozen, please don't just use my strategies. Like, these are helpful, but they're helpful in hand with real help. So I have to start with that, because I would never ever want to tell you that like you can just think your way out of something or trick your brain out of anything. That is just baloney. I think it's baloney to think that you can just like, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and think your way out of a situation. Not true. These strategies are intended to be used side by side with speaking honestly about how you're doing with the people that you love, and getting help from a licensed professional who can really be there by your side and teach you more than you can learn anywhere else. So, assuming that you've done those things and you're talking honestly and you're getting help, but you still have one of those really intense moments, because they happen. One thing that I find is just so, can you hear my little dog's footsteps? One thing that I find to be a huge lifesaver is to use time to my advantage. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you a really kind of mellow example first. When I start to feel my like psyche feels the struggle, it feels heavier, I'm feeling like some of the symptoms and the signs that I know equal mental health struggles. When that happens, I always look at the calendar and I mark down the day and I give myself a timeline. I say, in 2 weeks, if every day feels like this for 2 weeks, there's no way that I'm not going to go see a psychiatrist and get on medication, because I already see a psychologist. But if I didn't see a psychologist, maybe it would be that like I'm going to go see a therapist, or if you haven't like opened up to somebody close to you about how you're doing, I really think you should do that. But you can also use that strategy and say, hey, I'm going to talk to my husband about this if I feel this one more time. So you use time as kind of a benchmark, as like a way to lift the pressure. Because what happens when you're in a moment of panic and you're feeling terrible, you start telling yourself all these things. It's going to last forever. There's nothing I can do about it. Everything's falling apart, you know? And the truth is that time is going to do things that you don't know. And so if you put it on your calendar, if you make an actual note of when you're going to do the thing or when you're going to check back in, it's really helpful for easing the pressure. It turns down the volume of that you need to figure this out right now. Because the truth is when things are rough and hard, you can't figure this out right now. Like, you can't do it because your brain is muddled and your emotions are like flying wildly. So that's time. Tip number one is like put something on the calendar so that you give yourself a little bit of time to figure out what's going on. The other way I use time is when I am freaking out in the moment, when I'm having a panic attack, when I'm feeling like I'm losing my mind, and honestly, when I was feeling like I couldn't stand it anymore, like I can't live like this anymore, because that's a thought that would come up. Can't live like this anymore. I will also use time in those moments, much smaller amounts of time, because you never want to tell your super freaked out self, in 2 weeks we'll figure this out, because 2 weeks is not survivable. Like, you can't survive despair for 2 weeks. It's too much. But you can say, in 10 minutes, I'm going to check back in with how I'm doing and figure this out. I don't need to figure anything else out now, but in 10 minutes, I'm going to see how I'm doing and I'm going to figure it out. You can say, in 2 minutes, I'm going to reconsider this question of whether I can handle this. I'm going to take it for 2 minutes and then I'm going to look at the clock. And if I'm feeling worse, then I need to call the suicide helpline. I need to do something serious. But first, let's give it 2 minutes to see what happens. And when I was severely depressed and my brain was really hooked on suicidal ideation, that strategy worked for me really well a lot of the times. It gave me a little bit of a buffer between the moment of intensity and whatever happens next. So those are the ways that I think time can really, really be our friend. And then, long term, that knowledge that in the long scheme of things have not always been this way, and they're not always going to be this way. Just remembering that time does its thing can be really, really therapeutic. And although it's torturous to feel terrible for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, the truth is that it's not going to be forever, and that knowledge is really important. This strategy works too for if you are super duper duper mad about something, you can be like, oh, I'm furious. I am just going to be completely pissed off for 5 minutes and then I'll see how I'm doing. And a lot of times if we give our feelings a little bit of a room to kind of grow and then shrink back down, just like a breath, it can be a really valuable experience and a good asset for your mental health. And so that is what I've got for you today, guys. Time. Use it to your advantage. Things are not going to stay the same forever, and you should remember that. And if it feels like they are, then that just means that you need more help and you got to reach out and you got to get it. So, friends, I hope you're hearing from me that I want you to be supported, and I want you to give yourself space, and that I want you to trust the people around you, and I want you to trust time to do its thing, but never ignore super, super severe warning signs, because sometimes time is not enough. And so remember that too.